Welcome to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast, Achieving Peace Through Compassion. This podcast is a recording of the Dharma Talks given during our Sunday service.
And I will read to you. All beings want to be happy, none want to suffer. Yet there is suffering. This fact is the great motivation, the cause for seeking the Dharma and for putting wisdom and compassion into practice. As we reflect more deeply on suffering and its sources, we become more eager to end it for ourselves and others. The suffering of mental and physical pain is obvious. The suffering of change and impermanence is inevitable. The suffering of the three poisons, attachment, aversion, and ignorance, is all pervasive. Reflecting on suffering and its sources reminds us of why we were attracted to Buddhism in the first place. Seeing samsara for what it is pushes us to continue to develop spiritual qualities, such as the antidotes to the three poisons: generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. Right at the start of things, in the sutra, Setting the Wheel of the Dharma in Motion, the Buddha said, "Now this, monks, is the noble truth of suffering. Birth is suffering. Aging is suffering, sickness is suffering, death is suffering, sorrow and lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are suffering. Union with the unpleasant is suffering. Separation from the pleasant is suffering. Not getting what one wants is suffering. In brief, the five aggregates subject to clinging are suffering." Then he said, "You all need to know and understand this truth." Not so hard, right? It's easy enough to notice. The fact is, life inherently involves suffering and dissatisfaction. The excellent Arya beings, the noble ones who see these truths, they see all types of suffering, physical and mental, gross and subtle, exactly as they are, as suffering. However, many of us have had a contrary experience when we were ignorant of suffering. We thought something was desirable and that it would bring us happiness, but it did not. Possessions and relationships are the classic examples. We thought we would reduce our suffering by avoiding some displeasing thing, but our avoidance undermined our happiness and made our suffering worse. Hard work and exercise are classic examples. We, not so Arya beings, do not always see suffering just as it is. We shield ourselves and each other from the fact of suffering. We think we would be happier if we could hide out on the palace grounds like Gautama in his youth and know nothing of suffering. We and all sentient beings wish to avoid unhappiness, and more than that, we don't just wish to avoid unhappiness, we seek to avoid knowing and understanding. So I will show you how I illuminated some suffering for myself, where at first I didn't see it. This is a set piece that I've been working on over and over in my mind for years. There's Disney and there's the Brothers Grimm. And there's a word, Disneyfy, which means something like simplify and remove the uncomfortable parts, make it more colorful. Right? So Cinderella is a classic tale of a persecuted heroine. The stepmother and stepsisters are cast as the villains. However, the villains are our protectors. The more prominent they are in the story, the more they shield us from some of the deeper, truer suffering hidden in plain sight in that story. So mom dies, dad remarries. Stepmom and stepsisters, Cinderella. Cinderella sleeps in the cinders by the hearth, hence the name. The Disney and Brothers Grimm versions are in accord in some details. In both, there are birds that come to Cinderella's aid. You'll have to decide if they sing the same tune, though. You can Google this. There's a dance, and when Cinderella says she wants to go too, she gets this reply. "No," said the oldest one, "we would be ashamed if you were to be seen there and people learned that you are our sister." Here are two worldly winds: fame and insignificance, status and disgrace. Right? This is where status hierarchies and social anxieties live. Rich and poor, beautiful and ugly, Brahmin and Dalit, Jew and Greek, free and slave, male and female, whatever. We all live in the gaze of others. Sartre described the gaze as a process of internalizing the way others see us. Their view of us becomes our view of ourselves. Their view of us is a dim, imperfect one. Their vision is distorted by all the afflictions they carry. Since we are so concerned with how others see us, their afflicted vision of us is the version of ourselves that we adopt. They see us wrongly, and we are complicit in objectifying and dehumanizing ourselves. This is what Sartre meant when he had a character say, hell is other people. Yeah. And they would be if they were ashamed to be seen with you. Yeah. So on to the story. Cinderella dances with the prince without being identified, and then she dips from the party. On the way out, she loses her slipper, and later the prince thinks to use it to find her. And so the prince said, no one shall be my wife except for the one whose foot fits this golden shoe. And Cinderella's two sisters were happy to hear this, for they had pretty feet. With her mother standing by, the older one took the shoe into her bedroom to try on. She could not get her big toe into it, for the shoe was too small for her. Then her mother gave her a knife and said, cut off your toe. Well, when you are queen, you will no longer have to go on foot. The girl cut off her toe, forced her foot into the shoe, swallowed the pain, and went out to the... So how do we describe what just happened? Some of our language is a little academic. Yeah. A little sterile. So I'll say, yes, sexual objectification, the male gaze, body dysmorphic disorder. Yeah. So that kind of talk distances ourselves from the raw pain of disfiguring ourselves, mutilating our body, speech, and mind. So the Brothers Grimm have made this suffering visible. There's a fellow, John Beringer, did a piece called Ways of Seeing some time ago, and he writes, a woman has to survey everything she is and everything she does, because how she appears to men is of crucial importance for what is normally thought of as the success of her life. Now, we can see these little things, these moments of what we would call them gender conformity, ways of being that we feel we must adopt because of the way others look at us. Does Cinderella live happily ever after? Do her stepsisters have their eyes pecked out by the birds? You can review your favorite version, Disney or Grimm, to find out. Honestly, that all sounds really icky and gross and awkward, right? Maybe we don't even like to talk about it. I don't like to let my mind go there. The point is, I have told myself stories, tales filled with rationalizations, justifications, excuses that shield me from suffering. I'm afraid that confronting the enormous amount of suffering of sentient beings will be too much for me. I can't even get myself to recognize the little bits of suffering I have played a role in creating. It's too hard to look at. So why face it? Why face the true reality of suffering? What if illusion is more comfortable? If it were, we would hope the Buddha would leave us alone in our ignorance. I don't want to know. Knock it off. But suffering forces itself upon our consciousness. I mean, there it is. You can't avoid it. William Goldman, he wrote Princess Bride. I'm paraphrasing. He says, anyone who tells you can avoid the suffering of life is trying to sell you something. It's there, and there it is. But really feeling the suffering motivates us to do something about it. Doing something about it makes us happier, gives us the charity. I give to charity, and they help someone with real physical malady like hunger and blindness. And then I feel a little better. I don't have to be so small-hearted and closed off. I can better connect with others, not necessarily those that were helped. I never even met them. But I am closest to those right here. Right? I am more open to sharing the warmth. All it takes is that little motivation. And the more we understand suffering, the better we can address its causes. We'll be more effective in our practices. We try and reduce suffering for ourselves and others. This is actually the first step towards the so-called happy and meaningful life that Dalai Lama and everybody goes on about, if you just do this. So coming to see things as they really are lets us address the problem effectively. That's why it's worth it. Face up to the truth of suffering, let real life break through, lose some of your ignorance and your illusions. I'll tell you a couple of types of suffering I've run across. The list is out of the sutras, right? The suffering of suffering. It's just regular physical and mental pain. And it's not just, right, my knee, but but also my heart. It's just regular sorrow and lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are suffering. Sometimes I'm tempted to gloss over this regular, simple kind. I think, well, my knee isn't actually hurting right now, so it's fine. There's nothing to see here. But there is plenty of ignorance, denial, repression, absent-mindedness surrounding the suffering of suffering. We all know what usually happens when we face difficulties. We experience impatience and anger. We blame others. We deploy all our defensive strategies. These kinds of reactions block us from the truth of suffering. So you might have a couple of moments. One is with mindfulness and breath work, your body scans, you may come back to your body. I have tried this. The dissatisfactions were always there, right? But with attention to our states of mind and body, we can release our stress and worry. At this point, I would mention a book, Full Catastrophe Living by John Kabat-Zinn, early and important book, subtitled Using the Wisdom of Your Body and Mind, Face Stress, Pain, and Illness. In the practice of meditation, you may have moments or many sessions filled with regret, tears, mental anguish. I recall some event and cringe and embarrassment. Another memory leads me when I say, I'm sorry, like 108 times. A third thought has me anxiously planning, anticipating future events. So that old one, too, of remorse and worry is one of the hindrances that get in the way of concentration and practice. So we need to do something about it. It may go without saying, or it may be news to you, but guilt, grief, regret about the past, fear and anxiety about the future won't simply disappear from our minds if we can only ignore them hard enough. So let them come and find out about it. And then there's the suffering of impermanence. Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, sickness is suffering, death is suffering. This time reading through it, it didn't say age in my version, it said aging. Maybe I just noticed that. That's already happening, right? But change isn't the problem. Impermanence itself isn't suffering. It's the way we relate to or experience impermanence that generates suffering. Our attachment to pleasant things and our wish that they remain the same is suffering, because they don't. Everything that begins ends. I remind myself of this, and then I turn around and act like I didn't know. At the moment that I perceive phenomena, right here, my mind doesn't admit the fact that all these phenomena are subject to change. And then they do change, and I'm surprised, shocked. I feel wrong. What? How could this happen? I didn't see it coming. So it's everywhere. Suffering is pervasive. The 5 aggregates subject to clinging are suffering. And that's shorthand for saying what we consider ourselves, body, speech, and mind. We cling to it, and that causes suffering. You may become aware that we are caught in a cycle of emotions, actions centered around trying to satisfy our wants. And we think, well, there isn't much to this endless commotion. It's exhausting, repetitive, and often futile. And beyond our dissatisfaction with our surroundings, our possessions, and people around us, we become disenchanted with our very condition. Think of this as coming to see the wheel of samsara, or the rat race, or the daily grind, or the vague, inarticulate sense that our lives are incomplete. We lack something. We're not whole. We're not free. We're not in control. Our lives are pointless. Our actions are meaningless. There's something missing. And we see that we're not very effective. We act for our benefit, but it doesn't work. We try to avoid harm, it doesn't work. We try and help other people, not so good. And we see that our ignorance and our afflictive emotions result in our inability to act skillfully. We get in the way. It's the clinging, the attachment, the antipathy, the ignorance that makes us suffer. The very way we relate to ourselves and each other, the way we relate to the world, is at odds with our own happiness. So we're familiar with the second arrows, the extra sorrows of the negative emotions, right? Fear, sadness, anger, even when it's righteous or justified, shame, guilt, and so on. All that hurts. First something happens, and then we feel bad about all the stuff we felt bad about. There are other things like this that are a little more subtle. I'm going to call out a few of them that I have noticed in myself. All right. I have experienced indifference and apathy. Indifference and apathy can appear as prudence and carefulness. I am tempted to say, I don't really care, do you? Perhaps we shouldn't risk too much and instead guard what we have. I have experienced despair. Despair can appear as realism or fatalism. It is easy to feel like there are problems we can do little to affect. I always wanted to stop the war and save the rainforest and defend civil rights and cure blindness. But I'm not sure the t-shirt I bought is really going to make a difference. What can I do? Believing I'm truly disempowered is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's also a relief since I'm off the hook. The responsibility is lifted. I have experienced misanthropy. Misanthropy can appear as morally justified disdain. After all, where is all this suffering coming from? It's not coming from the hurricanes and the earthquakes, most of it, right? The birds aren't doing it, the dogs and cats. It's people, human beings, who cause the damage. Who could blame us for wanting to condemn and withdraw from such cruel, selfish creatures? I have experienced cynicism. Cynicism can appear as a rational defense against the proven ill intent of others. I know that all the politicians are liars and all the cops are criminals. There are bad characters and bad actors on both sides, everywhere you look, really. I certainly wouldn't give them the benefit of the doubt and impute charitable motives. I don't want to let them take advantage of me. I won't get fooled again. Yeah, so there's a lot of suffering. Kind of limitless, just like sentient beings. But luckily, so are the responses: generosity, loving kindness, wisdom, and the rest. That's also limitless. All right. So I'm going to tell you the story of Avalokiteshvara to close this up. The story of the birth of Tara, actually, from the tears of Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara is Chenrezig, as the Tibetans know him, Guanyin in China, Kannon in Japan. And the mantra is Om Mani Padme Hum. This version is from a couple of books. Rachel Wooten has a book on Tara, the liberating power of the feminine, female Buddha, and also Alan Wallace's Four Immeasurables book. There was a time when the great bodhisattva of compassion, Avalokiteshvara, made a vow to free all sentient beings from the lower realms of existence. In a moment of high energy and great confidence, he made a vow before other Buddhas and bodhisattvas. He would work endlessly until he had alleviated the suffering of all beings, and all beings had finally been liberated. He proclaimed, "If I should hesitate in this task for even a moment, then let me shatter into 1,000 pieces." Having set his intention, he began to work with great vigor and amazing force. For lifetime after lifetime, over billions of years, not only on our planet, but on other countless worlds, Avalokiteshvara himself attended to each sentient being, striving to be of service. He felt tremendous joy as he freed one sentient being after another, picturing the starfish here. And then after eons had gone by, he turned his gaze and looked behind him. And there he saw a vast expanse of countless other beings falling into the lower realms where they experienced great suffering. He hesitated. For one instant, he gave up. According to his vow, he shattered into countless fragments. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who had witnessed his vow and his great effort gathered all of the tiny pieces and put them together again. After Avalokiteshvara was made whole again, he wept profusely. His tears formed a pool in which a beautiful lotus flower blossomed. Tara arose from its open center, a Buddha herself, the goddess of compassion and action. And she said to him, "Don't despair, I'll help you." From that time forward, Avalokiteshvara had 1,000 arms, many faces, and limitless power to liberate beings. And now he realized that he had a companion, Tara, dedicated to the same effort as he. So the story reminds me that while suffering is endless, this grief and sadness aren't necessary. Ground state of sadness inhibits our ability to be of service. Too much grief might even shatter us. Tara's response to Avalokiteshvara's frustration and sadness is a reminder that suffering isn't the end of the story. It's the first of at least 4 noble truths. So there's more. Encountering suffering, understanding it, and moving through it allows us to connect with one another more deeply. Together, we are each other's spiritual friends. Together, with the Sangha, we can persevere with buoyance, with lightness, and with strength.
Thank you for listening to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast. Music was provided by Barefoot Bran Music. Please consider supporting the Rime Buddhist Center by making a donation at our website at www.rimecenter.org/donate.